Before my rebirth, I was a worker. If I were to continue working after my rebirth, wouldn't I be reborn in vain? This is a story about striving for life freedom and liver skills. Keywords of the novel. Returning to 88, in order to win liver skills without pop-ups. Returning to 88, in order to win liver skills, complete download of TXT, Returning to 88, in order to win liver skills, latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth with Golden Fingers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Rebirth with Golden Fingers. Yan Chongqing has been reborn. He was originally experiencing the sunny beach waves at the seaside in Weisha, and was overjoyed. He plunged into the sea with a sudden thrust, but unexpectedly came out and ended up in the small river in his hometown. The originally chubby figure has suddenly transformed into the small body of a 6 or 7-year-old doll. The vaguely familiar small river ditch, with the scorching sun and slightly warm river water on his head, made him unsure for a moment whether it was in his dream or reality. He didn't care about the anxiously calling his 2 bare buttocks in the water, ran over a small beach and climbed up the riverbank. Looking at the wild grass growing recklessly along both sides of the river, as well as the harvested wheat fields and the farmers inside, his mind was blank. Turning his head, in the open field in the distance, there was a small village that he was very familiar with in his dream. This is his hometown, Danswang. Although it was quite far away, he seemed to have seen the low houses in the village, the jujube, pear, and Chinese tun trees in his own yard, the string of red chili peppers hanging on the left wall of the main entrance, the old silk gourd hanging on the right wall, and the pumpkin and winter melon seed sun-dried on the windowsill. That's great. Yan Chongqing thought to herself, suddenly feeling like crying. You shouldn't cry, it's something worth being happy about. Be happy. He thought this way, watching those busy people in the fields, trying to find familiar figures. Although she hadn't seen such a scene for many years, Yan Chongqing knew at a glance that everyone was probably busy ordering corn. It's actually planting corn, digging a pit and filling it with a few seeds, which looks simple but actually quite tiring. Not far away was a busy couple. The woman, tired from work, straightened up and pounded her back, looking around to stretch her neck. Then she saw Yan Chongqing standing naked, with her ribs exposed and her small belly sticking out. There was also a crystal-clear water droplet hanging from the tip of the calf below, standing under the big sun. She seemed stunned for a moment, then suddenly became happy, pointing to Yan Chongqing and shouting, "Qingwazi, run quickly, your father is here." Dad! Yan Chongqing turned around and saw a figure that only appeared in her dream, running towards her. At first glance, it was because of messy hair wearing a straw hat, antique bronze skin, a white and yellow dacron shirt, gray pants, a pair of military green cloth shoes, and a hole in the front part wrapped in rubber. The flipped-up rubber looked like a flower. The man with thick eyebrows and big eyes rushed over and rushed towards his own child. Yan Chongqing couldn't help but extend his hand. This is his young and strong father. How many times in his dreams, he has dreamed of that innocent smile, broad chest, powerful arms. This simple peasant man, giving himself the mountain-like fatherly love. Finally, I see you again. No, I still feel it. His still young and strong father grabbed his arm and pulled him unsteadily, and then he felt the mountain-like fatherly love. Pop pop pop. Yan Chongqing didn't even know what had happened, but she felt a real pain in her buttocks. That's really painful. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice rang in my ear. If I can't see you at first glance, I'll jump into the river, right? I haven't been beaten in 3 days, have I? The woman who was pounding her back just now burst out laughing, and the man in front of her who was still digging a hole lifted his head and looked at her. He laughed and shouted, "Brother Hai, hit it lightly. If it's damaged, you won't have to hit it anymore." Am I being beaten? Later on, Yan Chongqing felt a bit dumbfounded and her mind was still in chaos, but she instinctively began to cry. With tears in his eyes, he looked at his young and strong father. Yes, this familiar slap, this familiar strength, is still his young and strong biological father. Wow, wow. 2 bear children in the river gloated and said, 7 pounds got beaten, 7 pounds got beaten, ha ha ha. Chi Jin is the nickname of Yen Chongqing, and many years later, no one called it except for a few young men in the village. My dear father Yen Dahai turned his head and looked around, then pretended to shout towards the distance, Wazi, the iron egg has fallen into the river. The 2 bear children suddenly became excited and jumped out of the river, rushing towards the 3 piles of clothes thrown by the riverbank. Each person picked up a pile, grabbed the sandals under the clothes, and ran towards the distance. One of the naked buttocks couldn't help but turn around and shout, Uncle Dahai, you read it wrong. I'm not the second child. Sure enough, the second child is the second child. This child has been smart since childhood. Yen Chongqing looked at the small figure running away without a trace, and suddenly a figure who was also young and fat appeared in her mind. She couldn't help but laugh and her nose suddenly spurted out. But then he couldn't laugh anymore, accompanied by a loud slap and another pain in his buttocks. You still have a smile on your face. Even the 2 children know how to run, and you don't even know. Yen Chongqing suddenly felt even more severe pain in her buttocks. Tank tops, pants, and sandals. Summer 3-piece set for rural boys. Wearing pants and shoes, holding a vest, Yen Chongqing obediently followed her father towards her own field, with thoughts swirling in her mind. A few steps later, I saw the slender figure wearing a big straw hat in the farmland, wearing a white floral shirt with 2 big braids under the hat. With a sweaty face and big eyes with a smile, I was looking at myself with a basket on my shoulder. For some reason, he couldn't hold back and started crying again. Mom. Got beaten. Let you go down the river. Remember not to sneak down the river in the future, okay? A familiar young voice that only appears in dreams. The young woman wiped her shirt with one hand and then wiped his face. Don't cry, are you all men crying now? Let others laugh. Yen Chongqing cried even harder, but couldn't help it. He simply howled and said, Mom. What's wrong with this? Let me see where it went. Oh, it's all red. You can't even be gentle in the Dead Sea. The young figure said, feeling a little lost when he saw the child crying so badly. He turned around and patted the man with a frown beside him a few times, saying, 7 pounds, don't cry, don't cry. Look, I even hit your dad. Pushi. This familiar scene made Yen Chongqing couldn't help but laugh again. My face was covered in runny nose and tears. The woman also laughed, took out a handkerchief, and wiped it against his face. Stop crying, you're playing here yourself. Mom and your dad still have to order some baogu. We'll cook eggs for you when we go back at noon. Yen Chongqing looked at her and said, Mom, I miss you. The woman was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter and said, Are you stupid? Go play in the shade over there, ahaha. Go, be good. There is a row of poplar trees on the ground by the river, and there is a small, broken mat under each tree. Next to it is a small shovel and a small one. Head, this is a toy for a 6-year-old child. There is also a large aluminum pot next to it, with an enamel teacup clasped on the spout, which is something he is very familiar with. Yen Chongqing looked at her young parents, who were working, and occasionally glanced over here, afraid that she might go play in the river again. My heart is filled with happiness. The small shovel was in hand, unconsciously digging on a damp piece of land next to the mat. It's been a long time since I played with the mud. The wind by the river blows gently, carrying heat and the water vapor in the river, creating a familiar feeling and taste. Well, it's reborn. He didn't want to think about the hard and arduous life he had in his previous life, especially when his parents were sick in old age. At that time, they were separated and had little ability to take care of them by his side. They are still young now. In this life, we must make them less tired and live a better life. His mind was filled with chaotic thoughts and happiness, and then he felt as if something was wrong. He felt a crystal clear small jade plate, with a refreshing green color that made him feel a hint of coolness even on hot days. Gold finger. Not bad. What are the features? The green little jade plate seemed invisible, appearing in his hand, then suddenly running to his arm to show its face, and then emerging from his belly. Yan Changqing couldn't help but mutter, "What exactly do you have? You can't just bubble everywhere, can you?" The green jade plate stopped and was slowly spinning around his little belly button, as if feeling a bit confused. "Can you let me shuttle back again? I'll go bring some delicious food and drink back. If you want me to fly away, it's okay. If not, a skill bonus would be great." The small jade plate didn't make Yan Changqing guess for too long, and soon stopped rotating, and then two symbols emerged. It's a symbol, but Yan Changqing can understand the meaning of these two symbols. Skill. Haha. Yan Changqing couldn't help but laugh, he really gave him skills. But are they all empty now? Do I have no skills at all? Do you need to practice slowly? The small jade plate remained motionless. Okay too. Yan Changqing is already very satisfied. Skills are just skills, and if it's not a big deal, you can practice slowly in the future. Speaking of being reborn and carrying golden fingers, how will I live this life? Quickly, he made up his mind to work and struggle, all rolled away. In this life, do what you want to do, play with liver skills without any worries, and live your life effortlessly. Otherwise, if one strives to work before being reborn, and then goes on to work and struggle after being reborn, wouldn't that be a waste of time? Then he lowered his head and looked at Xiao Yupen, saying, "How can I handle this skill? I won't give a hint either." After some thought, he simply picked up a small shovel and started digging into the slightly moist soil. First, try to develop a pit digging skill. Skills are small things, the main thing is to see if this skill is difficult to master. After digging for a while and looking at the small jade plate, Yan Changqing couldn't help but mutter to herself, "This skill doesn't seem to be so easy to master, right? Just as I was thinking about it, my parents from the farmland came over carrying hoes and baskets. 7 pounds, pack your things and go home. Don't play with your urine and mud. Urine sludge. Is this wet place where I pee? Impossible, I am a reborn person. How could I play with urine mud? Absolutely impossible." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. First skill swimming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. First skill swimming. Lunch is noodles. In a ceramic bowl, the hand-rolled noodles, which are not very white, are filtered in cold water and not as hot to eat. There are also a few green vegetable leaves inside, sprinkled with sesame salt, and poured with a spoonful of garlic juice, making a good meal. The promised eggs are not available, and Yan Changqing didn't mind either. They have been fooled for a lifetime and are very accustomed to it. Sesame salt is made from stir-fried sesame seeds in a pot, sprinkled with salt, and then crushed with a rolling pin. The garlic cloves of garlic juice are mashed with fennel leaves, and the taste is delicious. Sometimes I would replace the fennel leaves with 5 fragrant leaves, as they are delicious anyway. Although it was light and oil-free, Yan Changqing wanted to cry as she ate it. It was a unique taste from her hometown that she hadn't eaten for a long time. He dared not look up, afraid that tears would fall, so he simply lowered his head and ate heavily. Grandpa, who was smiling beside him, was extremely happy and said, "Eat more 7 pounds and grow up in the future." Yan Changqing wanted to cry again, a bit like scolding herself, "Really useless, my grandparents are still here at this time." During the busy farming season, the two of them went separately to their 2 sons' homes to help cook at home. A large bowl of noodles has a round stomach, and you need to drink some noodle soup. In the old saying, the original soup turns into the original food. You need to drink some soup whether you want to get noodles or dumplings. If you don't drink noodles, you will be beaten. In his previous life, Yan Chongqing was beaten up a lot because of this, but the more he let him drink, the less he would drink. He was just a troublemaker, and then he got beaten up. But now he honestly carries a big bowl, runs to the stove, steps on a small stool, scoops up half of the bowl with a spoon, blows to make it cool faster, and gathers under the shade of the trees in the yard. Grandpa was surprised and said, "Hey, 7 pounds has really grown up. I already know how to scoop soup." Even my parents are strange, but they didn't say anything, but they clearly look a bit happy. Yan Chongqing is also very happy. Then he placed the bowl on the chair, and a jade plate appeared in front of him. Just now he ate a big bowl of rice. He doesn't have any eating skills. He has tried it, and it is truly a golden finger. It conforms to the law of alloy fingers, and he can see it alone. It seems that this skill needs to be studied slowly. But it doesn't matter, he has plenty of time. After finishing the soup, he started wandering around, looking at the familiar and unfamiliar old house. Later on, his parents went out to work and renovated the house into a small building, but no one came back to live there. No one cares about him. Rural children are like this. As long as they don't go to school, they just wander around and do whatever they don't want to do. How can they make their families headache? 7 or 8 or 9, you despise dead dogs. My hometown is very simple. There are 3 brick and tile houses side by side. One main house is also called a main house, and the east and west 2 rooms are bedrooms. There is also a shed on each end, with a firewood shed to the east and a platform for storing carts and agricultural tools to the west. There are 2 big jujube trees in the outer courtyard, 1 pear tree and 1 Chinese tun tree. The Chinese tun tree with thick arms is pitiful, only the top has leaves, and the branches below have been stripped and eaten. To the west of the yard are chicken coops and toilets, while to the east is a kitchen. These are all earthen walls, including the courtyard wall. The most decent furniture in the hall is a long table, placed against the back wall, with only 1 cabinet away from both sides of the wall. But there is no cabinet to put it in. There is a built-in cabinet at the bottom of these 2 ends, and there are drawers on top. The other furniture is a small square table, 2 benches, and a few chairs. Yan Chongqing is looking at the calendar, a small calendar that is as big as a palm. Every day, she tears a page, and now there is still half a book thick. This year was 1988, and now he is 6 years old. This year, he didn't have any household appliances at home, not even a flashlight or a light. Currently, the country is implementing a rural electricity supply plan, but it will take time to implement, and he is expected to have electricity in the next 2 years. There are no kindergartens or preschool classes in the countryside. When he is 7 years old, he will go to the neighboring village to attend elementary school. Then he went to a high school in the town. The first time he went to the county was probably during the high school entrance examination, which was his first time going to a big city. But this life must definitely change. Thinking about it, he lay down on the mat in the middle of the hall and began to study his golden fingers. Brother Qijin, are you going out to play or not? In a daze, I heard a shout. Yan Chongqing raised her head, rubbed her eyes, and saw 2 bald kids walking in with a big grin. Brother Qijin, you're still asleep. Let's go play. The speaker was Hua, and the bear child grinned as he spoke. Yan Chongqing understood at a glance, let's go, let's go. The grandfather who fanned him while he was asleep next to him was unhappy and said, don't sneak into the pool to play. No one is allowed to go into the water. Got it, third master. Iron Egg replied quickly. We wouldn't sneak down to the pool to play. A few minutes later, the 3 naked little children roared and rushed into the big pond by the village. They are not secretive, they are open and aboveboard. I got beaten in the morning because 3 little bear kids went to play in the river where no one was watching. At most, they were told a few words in this pond and usually wouldn't get beaten. Under the shade of trees on the shore, people who don't take a nap are watching. For so many years, this large pond by the village has never drowned anyone. This large pond has dozens of acres of land, with lotus roots planted in the distance, fish raised in the pond, and clams in the mud at the bottom of the pond. It's all so strange. Every year, the dolls touch the clams inside and bring them back to smash and feed the ducks, but over the years, the clams in the pond haven't been completely touched. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, and the water in the pond was warm. The bear kids were naked and like loaches. You came out and I plunged in, and then a few people started playing and touching stones. Yan Changqing also played happily. The second child, Iron Egg, called him to play the game of touching stones, and he took the initiative to choose the job of throwing stones. What's fun about touching stones? A group of bear kids carry a pond on their backs, and then one person throws a big stone into the water. A group of people dive in and touch randomly, and whoever touches first wins. It's boring. The biggest advantage of this game is that every time these bear kids come ashore, they have to report their numbers to prevent anyone from secretly waiting in the pond to take the lead. But Yan Changqing looked at it again and felt that this game had a life-saving function. He would climb to the edge of the pond every few minutes to count, so as not to let anyone escape from the water and drown. After the child stood up with his bare buttocks, Yan Changqing threw the stone towards the pond and continued to study his skills. Take a backstroke lap, a breaststroke lap, throw a stone up once, and then come down for a while with a dog paddle. After soaking her hands and feet in the water until they were white and wrinkled, Yan Changqing couldn't help but burst out laughing. On the small jade plate, 2 characters appeared below the 2 symbols representing skills. Swimming. Yan Changqing probably understood a bit. Swimming was something she knew in her previous life. After swimming for many years, she has only become proficient again, so she has developed this skill quickly. After the word swimming, there is also a progress bar and a symbol indicating that it is a level 1 skill. But there is no option to add anything below. Just like Wei Zhongxian achieved the age of 9,000, but it still cannot change the fact that is gone below. Yan Changqing wants to give a negative review. Xiao Yupan is a bit small, but Yan Changqing studied the skill progress bar for a while and found that the length of the progress bar can change according to her own mind. As long as the length becomes long enough, the estimated progress will be more accurate. After pondering for a while, Yan Changqing decided to join his friends and start splashing in the water together. Originally, his swimming skills were only average in the village, but now he has gained a considerable amount of experience compared to others, and after developing his skills, he clearly feels that he has control over his body, including a more accurate judgment of the water environment. The bottom of the pond against the shore is yellow mud, and the bottom has been stepped on hard, but towards the inside is mud. In his previous life, he was so foolish that he only knew how to poke his face into the mud. Now that he has mastered his skills, there is no risk of breaking his appearance. Don't say anything about opening your eyes in the water. A dozen or so bear kids were splashing around by the edge of this pond, and it was obvious that the water in this area was turning yellow and not visible at all. After playing all afternoon, Yan Changqing had some summary. Firstly, after acquiring the skills, when striving to improve one's proficiency, it is not the case that many experiences are memorized in one's mind at once, but rather that one can quickly find the right direction of effort. Taking radio exercises as an example, doing one action 100 times, only once is the most correct way to improve oneself the most. Normally, you need to practice multiple times to find that feeling again, but with the presence of golden fingers, as long as you do it correctly once, you immediately feel it, which is right. Just like the fleeting inspiration in the dark, which you would need countless times to recall and try to capture, now that fleeting inspiration has become a star in your mind. As long as you are willing, that star is up to you to observe and experience, guiding you on the path ahead to what is right and what is wrong. This is the true golden finger, surpassing any guidance from a renowned teacher, allowing every effort to yield maximum benefits and even immersing oneself in it. Secondly, if you want to improve your skills, you need to focus. When Yan Changqing started researching swimming skills, he only thought about the progress bar and instead improved slowly. It was quite dark playing later on, and when I got home soon, I looked at the progress bar, which was much more than I had originally estimated. Anyway, there's also a 1.5%. When I got home, I ate half a bowl of extra food, which made my grandfather so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. When Grandpa was happy, his parents didn't even talk much about going to the pond. The big picture, the biggest thing for children to eat. Yan Changqing was even happier as he realized he had an additional skill. Eating. Are you all at the same level, and have you eaten all the food from your previous life for free? It shouldn't be, otherwise skills wouldn't be formed so quickly. I haven't had any entertainment after eating, and the village hasn't started a wave of work these days. There is no television in the whole village. Lying on a small wooden bed in the yard, watching the stars dot the deep blue sky and the magnificent Milky Way, Yan Changqing was deeply moved. Then continue to study the skills. The skill of eating not only includes eating, but also using chopsticks. Now he can confirm that the formation of skills is also beneficial for his physical fitness. For example, swimming skills allow him to better control his body while swimming in the water, while eating skills make his hands more flexible. A 6-year-old child's hands are still a bit small, making it a bit awkward to hold chopsticks, but with the skills, that awkwardness disappears. Of course, like swimming skills, the ability to eat is also related to his decades of experience. Now lying in bed, he is studying breathing. After all, other skills don't have these two benefits. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fishing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Fishing. In less than a week, Yan Changqing mastered a bunch of skills. Eating, drinking, lazing, walking, sleeping, anything he wants can become a skill. But after comprehensive consideration and a few days of mastering the functions of the small jade plate, he synthesized many skills together. For example, eating and drinking water can be combined into one skill, and there is no need to mention the two skills of laza. In fact, the four skills can be combined together, but Yan Changqing is not willing to do so. Walking, running, and jumping can also be one, and hearing, smell, and vision can also be combined. In the end, 7 main skills were formed. Eating and drinking, defecation, walking, listening, smelling, breathing, sleeping, and swimming. Let's not talk about the progress, it's all about 45%. There is also a small skill, the ability to dress and undress, and the progress bar is basically not moving. It's probably because the summer vests and pants of the bear kids are a bit too easy to put on and take off. These are not important, what's important is that I practice skills by immersing myself in water every day. When I swam to the deep water in the middle of the pond, I was slapped a few more times and achieved the achievement of being beaten every 3 days after rebirth. It's estimated that if this continues, there won't be many more beaten skills in the near future. No way. Children have no human rights. When lunch came, Yan Changqing was a little reluctant to get noodles again. At the beginning, it was quite fresh. The familiar laomian noodles and corn grits and sweet potato dried porridge could not be eaten for several days. We need to find a way, we can't continue like this. Having mastered the basic skills, Yan Changqing also thought a little more. The most memorable thing for him in his previous life was going to school in town in junior high school. When the summer vacation was approaching in the second year of junior high, he had a fever and couldn't afford to go see a doctor. He felt embarrassed to borrow money from relatives and classmates, covered himself in sweat with a blanket in the dormitory, and persevered. Although I didn't plan to live so tiredly after being reborn, my living conditions still need to be improved. Recalling the skills she had learned in her previous life, Yan Changqing felt a bit worried. In fact, he knows quite a lot about building walls, bricklaying, and plastering. He is quite skilled at these tasks as a bricklayer. You can also get started with interior decoration work, and the most skilled one is screwing screws on the assembly line. The problem is that I am too young to do it. Then he could only come up with a solution for agricultural work, but these things were slow to take effect. After much thought, he finally came up with an idea. After lunch, Yan Changqing told her mother Li Xioni, "Mom, I'll go to Uncle Er's house to see my little brother later. Uncle Yan has only recently gotten married, and now his aunt is taking care of the children while his grandmother is helping over there." Yan Changqing said he was looking at his little brother, but in fact, he had a purpose. Walking on the village path with my grandfather, he discussed with him, "Grandpa, I want to use Uncle Er's things to go fishing later. Can you tell him? Grandpa doesn't have to think at all. Whatever you say, go get it if you want to play." Uncle Er is one of the less upright types in the countryside. Apart from not being able to do proper agricultural work well, he can also make trouble with everything else. He not only has fishing things in his house, but also 3 gunpowder guns. The collection of firearms has not yet begun, and there are people selling gunpowder and iron sand in the market town. No one is in charge. Yan Changqing first went to coax his younger brother Yan Changpa to play for a while, and then said a few nice words to his grandmother and aunt, making all 3 of them laugh. The grandfather over there has finished tidying up his little son and came out with a cloth bag and a few bamboo poles. Yan looked bitter behind him and said, "What kind of fish can he catch? What should I do if he damages something for me?" Grandpa didn't give him a good face and said, "If it's bad, it's bad. After planting the baogu, you can tidy up your vegetable garden when you have nothing to do. It's better to order multiple dishes than anything else. Every day when you have nothing to do, you know how to fish and hunt rabbits, and there are people with babies." Yan Changqing got a bargain and even said obediently, "Don't worry, uncle. I promise to use it well, it won't break." As he grabbed his things and quickly ran away, he said, "I'm leaving, Grandpa and Grandma." After running a few steps, my second uncle stopped me and said, "Stop, you don't even have anything to fish for. Let me go dig earthworms for you." "Dad, I'll go with 7 Jean to save him from being unsafe alone." Grandpa was about to let him follow him when he agreed, "Go ahead. Just keep an eye on the 7 pounds. Earthworms are easy to dig in rural areas, and under the broken bricks and tiles behind old houses, you can easily find a small half bottle." When they arrived at the pond, Yan planned to deceive the child and said, "7 pounds, just sit down and I'll teach you how to fish. Look at me." Without being polite to him, Yan Changqing snatched the broken iron jar containing earthworms and started skewering them with a fishing hook, saying, "Uncle Er, I'll do it myself. Look at me." There are several types of fishing gear in this set, some with a short rod that is a bamboo rod, and others with a long rod that is a connected bamboo rod. There are also those who fish for big fish by hooking at the bottom of the river. A H-shaped wooden board is used to wrap the line, and a tin pendant is wrapped near the fishing hook. Throw it into the river and hang the line in your hand on a grass stick to watch. But it's not possible in the pond. With lotus roots, you can't pull them up if you throw them down. 3 fishing rods were propped up in front of him, and Yan Changqing pushed Uncle Er aside. Brushing skills, he couldn't intervene. Yan has no idea what to do. His nephew has recently had an epiphany and his little mouth is like honey, causing the 2 elderly people in the family to fuss around. He can't afford to provoke him at all. Yan Changqing enjoys it very much. The big willow trees next to him are the kind that one cannot hold, with a cool breeze and lotus flowers in the lotus pond to see. As the saying goes, the lotus leaves reaching up to the sky are infinitely green, while the lotus flowers reflecting the sun are exceptionally red. Next to Yan there seem to be nails under his buttocks, rubbing his hands together and muttering, "Fishing is not that easy. The fish in our pond are very shrewd, and the float should not move quickly at first." Yan Changqing couldn't bear his expression and thought for a moment, "Uncle Er, why don't I give you a fishing rod? Are you fishing too?" Okay, okay. Yen immediately grabbed a pole and sat calmly, feeling at ease. Chongqing has really grown up, that's right. You need to learn what to do. It's important to have a share in what you see, but it's not good to eat alone. That's right. No matter how others think of second uncle, in Yen Chongqing's eyes, he has always thought that second uncle is a good person since childhood. He has caught fish and rabbits, and never eats alone. For rural people who lack oil and water, Yen Chongqing's most memorable childhood was the scene of eating rabbit meat. I can't remember the details very clearly, but I just know that it's fragrant, very fragrant, especially fragrant. Anyway, when I grow up and earn money, no matter how I make rabbit meat in restaurants, it's not as delicious as when I was a child. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for the authorities to confiscate the firearms, so they couldn't eat them anymore. Just as he was thinking, he watched the trembling float plummet and hurriedly went to lift the fishing rod. It's not bad luck, there are fish, but the length is comparable to a finger. When taking the fish off the hook and putting it into the bucket, Yen pouted and said, "This fish is too small, throw it into the water." Xiao is also a fish. I mixed it with noodles and fried it to eat. Yen Chongqing was unwilling to let it go. How could it be possible to let it go as the first fish caught? How much noodles and oil do you need? Is your mother willing? Yen chuckled. Yen Chongqing suddenly became conflicted. Although she grew rapeseed and had rapeseed oil at home after thinking about it for a while, he decided not to be ashamed and asked, "Can we wait until we catch more fish and take it to the town to sell money and buy meat to eat?" Yen smiled again and said, "You little greedy cat, how much fish do you need to catch to buy a pound of meat? This kind of small fish is not worth much, not even 3 to 5 cents a pound may not be wanted by anyone. It's still hot, and if no one wants it for a while, it will stink." Yen Chongqing flipped through her memories and realized that Dian village belongs to Taoshu town, where 3 rivers converge on all 3 sides. When the water rises in summer, people nearby carry net bags to the river to catch fish. There are usually fishermen, those who bring fish eagles to catch fish, and in the future, there will be electric fish. It's strange that the price of fish can go up. Yen said again, "Small fish are not worth money, big fish are necessary." During the Chinese New Year, those 7 or 8 pounds of fish can be sold for about 1 yuan. If you can catch them, even the smaller ones can still make some money. It is said that some people sell eel in the county, so they will definitely make money. Yen Chongqing felt depressed. Looking back, it seemed like it was really true. The most expensive thing these days is fat, and everything else has to be kept aside. As for the other resources of Dian village, they really don't have any. The 2 nearby villages have their own specialties. A few years ago, they were known as the 9 Gang in 18 Washes, with nothing but bandits. Listening makes people feel helpless. Dianzhuang is better than that, at least there are not so many hills and valleys, and the harvest of the farmland is better. In fact, doing business these days is still very profitable. Although Yen Chongqing has never done it before, she has read novels. In his previous life, Yen Chongqing also heard from a classmate in the town that his family had started selling clothes in recent years and was quite profitable. It's just that the road is not safe, and at least 2 times when I made purchases, I was dragged away by someone because I turned around. Every time I made purchases, I was very anxious. But in my own situation, I have no capital, no skills, and no talent. I am a pure family with no family, and I have inherited from poor farmers. It used to be very honorable. We still need to think of a business without capital, and it cannot be written in criminal law. I thought to myself, my hands didn't stop either. With 2 poles up and down, there were hardly any big fish, but there were really quite a few small ones. Since acquiring skills, my body has become even better, and both my eyesight and reflexes have clearly changed from before. Besides, there are already many fish in this pond, so fishing is not a difficult task. Yen next to him was a bit puzzled. He claimed to be an old hand, but when he was fishing, he found himself not as good as a few years old doll, and slowly began to get restless. Finally, he handed the fishing rod over and stood up, saying, "It's hot and I don't want to fish anymore. You can fish by yourself, and I'll go down and play for a while." I found a place next to me with few lotus roots, took off all the light, and jumped down with a thud. Anyway, the village knows that during this season, most girls and daughter-in-law don't come to the pond. Newcomers new book, kneeling down to collect and ask for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Business without capital. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Business without capital. Later on, Yen Changqing's fishing skills came out. But now he has decided to give up the path of fishing to become rich, and he is not surprised by the emerging skills. Because he finally realized that it was not unreasonable for him to work for a lifetime in his previous life. Even if he was reborn, he had to find a way to eat meat from his golden fingers. He still doesn't want to admit that he's a waste and find reasons for himself. Who makes the geographical location of Dian village not so good? Dianzhuang is a poverty-stricken village in a poverty-stricken township under the jurisdiction of Yudong Province's poverty-stricken county. It remained on the county's list of remaining poverty-stricken villages until 30 years later. This is 20 miles away from the town, with a rural path of 7 turns and 8 strokes, especially the section of road leading out of Zhuangzi, which is Tiangang Road, only over 1 meter wide. At present, the road is relatively smooth, not well maintained, but because of poverty, the entire village doesn't even have a walking tractor, so the road hasn't been crushed. Yen Changqing thought for a while, and the last way he could think of to earn money to buy meat was through performing arts. Anyway, having a golden finger, it's not a big problem to develop a skill on your own. Then Yen Changqing instinctively thought of suona, sheng, gong, and bangzi, which were the same set of things used by rural funeral teams. Nowadays, Yen Changqing can only come into contact with so many musical instruments. Using the funeral team's set of musical instruments to perform may not be very effective. In the surrounding areas, currently only funeral teams use suona, and at other times no one will use it at all, which makes people feel unlucky. By the way, there is also the eru. Yen Changqing's eyes lit up and he shouted to the second uncle in the pond, "Second uncle, come up here to discuss something for you." Yen was not willing to go up. Soaking in the pond on a hot day was simply a pleasure. "But we still have to go, the bear child can't afford it." Climbing up and putting on clothes, he asked, "What do you want to make a fuss about? Does the 5 guarantees household in our village know how to pull strings?" La Xianzi means to play the eru in a dialect. 5 guarantee households are elderly people who lack the ability to work and are collectively supported by the village. The 5 guarantee households in Dianzhuang are a lame elderly person, of unknown age. It seems that they passed away before Yen Changqing finished elementary school. If it weren't for the thought of learning to play musical instruments, Yen Changqing would have almost forgotten that there was still such a person. 5 guarantee households. Yen thought for a moment. "What do you want to do?" after hearing him pull it. "I'm going to learn how to play string with him," Yen Changqing chuckled. "How about I take 2 fish to apprentice and learn art later?" "What's the use of learning that thing?" Yen looked confused. "It's better to catch a few ma ji liao and fry them back to eat, at least they still have a delicious taste." Ma ji liao is a cicada, while those with shells and no wings in the soil are called climbing forks. "I want to learn." Yen Changqing didn't listen to Uncle Air, and catching cicadas also took a lot of effort. The best thing was to touch the climbing fork at night, but the flashlight was too expensive and the battery was too expensive. Not many families were willing to use a flashlight to touch the climbing fork. Even worse, they didn't have one at home yet. As long as it is unreasonable and the tasks to be done are not too outrageous, children's demands can still be easily met. After a few words of persuasion, Yen was too lazy to say much. The bear child just remembered everything and asked him to learn, but most likely he wouldn't learn for a while. Anyway, 2 fish are not worth much, the key is the fish in the collective pond in the village. So when we went back, Yen pulled some grass leaves and threw them into the bucket, so that others couldn't see how many fish were inside. He also explained to Yen Chongqing the reason for doing so. These fish are collective, and we can catch 2 to eat. It's not good to have too many. If you want to fish again in the future, it's best to go to the river. In fact, others dare not say anything. There are several young people in the village who are about the same age as Uncle Air. They often go hunting rabbits together at night, and there are not many people in the village who dare to say that they are not good. Yen saw Yen Chongqing as a bear child, but in fact, at his own age, he was seen by the villagers as a dumbfounded young man. Describing someone who had little brain and was unreliable in handling things. With such a group of people gathered together and carrying gunpowder guns at any time, who, except for their parents, is so full that they can handle them. With the skills, fishing efficiency has significantly improved, with a harvest of 5 or 6 1-foot fish in an afternoon. Carp, silver carp, grass carp are all available, and there are also a few smaller crucian carp. Even the smaller ones are fine, so throw them into the pond and continue to be raised. In the evening, Yen Chongqing had a meal at Uncle Air's house, and the crucian carp he caught happened to catch up with Aunt Air, so that his younger brother Yen Changpa wouldn't have enough to eat. I didn't forget my parents and gave them a silver carp that was less than a foot long, with many stingers. They are all steamed and topped with seasonings such as chili and Sichuan peppercorns. The taste made by Grandma's craftsmanship is really fragrant. After finishing the meal, I picked up the 2 largest fish that I had deliberately left behind and went to study under the moonlight. Before going, I specifically asked Yang Zhili, the surname of the Wu Bao household. Actually, he is not from the hometown of Dian village. I heard that he used to be a landlord, but later he became a lame 5 guarantee household in Dian village for some reason. Limling Old Yang lived in 2 small dilapidated houses at the village head, with a wheat straw stack and a small peach tree at the entrance, and no yard. Grandpa took Yen Chongqing there, but when he arrived at the door and saw that the door was not closed, he didn't directly enter and shouted in the courtyard, "Lao Yang, didn't you sleep? The room is low and dark, and you can smell a seemingly unpleasant odor even at the door." The person inside agreed with a groping sound, and then a small flame lit up with a growl. The flames were moving, and an oil lamp lit up on the small square table. Although the light didn't shine on the room at all, it was enough for Yen Chongqing to see the person next to the square table. Lao Yang is a person who looks quite old. His hair and beard are all grayish-white, and he is naked with exposed ribs. He is wearing large pants with unclear colors and is sitting on a chair without a backrest. Listening to Grandpa and Lao Yang chatting for a few words, but not getting to the point, Yen Chongqing took the initiative to say, "Grandpa Yang, I want to learn how to play string with you. Do you like it?" Lao Yang was clearly stunned for a moment before chuckling and saying, "Zhong, why not Zhong?" His voice was a bit hoarse, and after just a few laughs, he started coughing again. However, he still happily started looking for something and said, "This isn't really a craft. I just play with it when I'm free. My skills are not good, so I just make a noise." The next day, Yen Chongqing began her journey of learning skills. Perhaps because he was coming, Yang Zhili even dressed up specially. His messy hair looked quite neat, and his beard was also trimmed. His dark face, full of wrinkles, was much more energetic, and he even wore clean clothes. The room was clearly freshly cleaned and sprinkled with water, although it didn't look very clean. Yen Chongqing felt a bit embarrassed. His motivation for learning art was just to eat meat. Yang Zhili's arrow is a very old one. He said that this arrow should be thrown away soon, and the current tone is not accurate. Yen Chongqing didn't mind, but he felt that the teacher's teaching was particularly to his taste, and he didn't teach music scores or anything. He just handed over the arrow and started teaching how to pull out the first sentence hand in hand. I am not teaching classical music, but a well-known river with wide waves, which is called my motherland. Yan Chongqing didn't have the heart to start learning basic sheet music or something like that. He thought he didn't have much artistic talent, and in his previous life, he often envied other classmates who knew how to play the flute and harmonica, while he only knew how to shout praises from the side. Even though it has now become quite clever and skillful, it took 3 full days to turn arrow into a skill. Yang Zhili taught a piece of music. I don't know anything else. To play a string, you need to be familiar with your hands. You keep playing a piece of music, and gradually you can think of what to play in the future. In fact, he knows a lot. Yan Chongqing didn't believe that he knew this song because when teaching before, he often played it casually, which was quite a pleasant tune. But Yan Chongqing didn't say much. He recently inquired about Yang Zhili with his grandfather and learned that playing the arrow was also one of his past mistakes. He was criticized for feudal remnants and capitalist ideology, and suffered a lot. So now we only teach a big river the width of its waves, and this guarantee won't be called wrong by anyone. Who dares? Although there was only one piece of music, Yan Chongqing was already very satisfied. It was already good to find a teacher to teach in this remote and impoverished area. After all, this is not the future. At that time, just find a tutoring class, pay a few hundred yuan in tuition, and spend a few hundred yuan to buy an arrow, and you will have a skilled teacher to help you fool your child through studying the arrow. Yan Chongqing has gained a better understanding of her small jade plate. The more focused you are, the faster your proficiency will improve. It's best if you can completely immerse yourself in the skills. He always recalls the arrow tunes he heard in his previous life when he has nothing to do, recalling the posture, movements, and demeanor of others playing the arrow, and then slowly pondering for himself. In order to give himself confidence, he even made the progress bar 4 or 5 meters long, making it more pleasing to watch the progress. It has been proven that recalling those songs can enhance one's sense of music, but the progress bar is indeed much faster. For his daily practice of playing Yang Zhili's arrow, he felt a bit embarrassed and specifically inquired about where to buy arrow. There were places available, but the price was unknown. It's okay, regardless of the price, it doesn't matter. I can't afford it now. For this, my parents also gave Yang Zhili some wheat, bean oil, and occasionally some vegetables as a reward. Next, Yan Chongqing pounced on the arrow. There is a progress bar, and Yan Chongqing was originally quite interested in arrow. This kind of life has a special flavor, just like the fish that can be eaten if you want now. Considering that it would take a long way to perform, he even developed a stone-throwing skill to defend himself. The same skill does not require any cost. Go to the riverbank to pick up stones and randomly find a target to smash them. Once the skill is developed, throw stones every day after playing the arrow, and use it as a physical activity. My family doesn't care what he's tinkering with, little bear. As long as he doesn't cause trouble everywhere and doesn't do anything dangerous, what else do you expect? It's not a big deal to prop up a wooden board and smash stones in the yard. As long as you don't go out to drive chickens and tease dogs, the family will have to thank God. With the presence of golden fingers, the throwing of stones naturally becomes more and more accurate. When the skills are developed, the techniques become even more rapid, especially in the early stages, where there is significant progress almost every day. If it weren't for the fact that playing the arrow could make a living and there was hope of making money to buy meat, Yan Chongqing would have planned to give up the arrow and focus on becoming a hidden weapon expert. After all, who didn't have a martial arts dream back then? Newcomer's New Book, Seeking Collection. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. He is still a child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. He is still a child. Shout, why don't you pull the strings for £7? Why are you going? A string player, Xiao Qijin, what are you calling me? Why are you strolling around? 7 pounds, have you learned your craft well? Come and show it to second master when you have time. Yan Changqing walked in the village carrying the arrow and met people who greeted him warmly. This was the side effect of learning the arrow, which made him suddenly become a celebrity in Dian village. The village is not very big, and on the second day he learned to play the arrow, he had successfully achieved a well-known achievement throughout the village. The reason why we didn't achieve anything on the first day was because those who knew about it on the first day felt that it was just a mischievous child and not worth mentioning. It has been almost 20 days since he started learning the arrow. Walking in the village, regardless of age, everyone wants to tease him with this. It's not a malicious joke, it's just for fun. Yan Changqing responded one by one with a smile and arrived at Uncle Air's house. As usual, first call out to Grandma and Auntie, and then praise Yan Changpa, who is still breastfeeding. With a series of moves, everyone is happy again. Yan is not fond of this nephew and is too mischievous. Yesterday, he even urged himself to trim other people's ponytails. Fortunately, I didn't do it myself and asked the owner of the horse to help me cut a strand. The fact proved that this decision was very wise, and he felt that he could boast about it for 6 months. Thinking to himself, as he watched his nephew sway around and approach him, he angrily asked, "Speak up, what do you want to do?" Yan Changqing squinted her eyes and said, "Go for a walk, go fishing." Fishing was originally intended as a fun activity, but it was taken by my nephew for less than a month. Now, Yan has decided to give up the bad habit of fishing. As she walked towards the river after leaving the village, Yan Changqing began to explain her purpose. "Uncle Air, I plan to earn money to buy meat. Let's join forces." Yan looked disdainful and said, "You make money? Hee hee." Yan Changqing had confidence in persuading him, "I have been practicing arrow for almost a month and am ready to go to the county town to perform. Take me there, let's find a street corner and set up a plate to perform. If we can make money, we can split it in half." In fact, there were only 20 days in total. The progress bar of the first level skill of playing the arrow has already passed halfway, making it the longest progress bar skill currently available, longer than sleeping, eating, and walking. Can you believe it? Originally, Yan Changqing planned to practice a skill at level 1 to see if there were any changes at level 2. But he can afford to wait, Yang Zhili's arrow cannot. The horsehair on the bow has already broken once, and the strings clearly don't last long. Not only the strings, but the entire arrow obviously won't last long. So Yan Changqing must go and make money as soon as possible, buy an arrow first. For the sake of the new arrow, he was very patient and said, "Uncle Air, listen to me. Although I have only been practicing for a month, my arrow is not bad at all. Wait a moment, listen to me. If you don't say anything else, you will definitely be able to go to the streets and perform. Besides, trying it out won't cost you any money. Even if you earn 1.5 cents, it's enough for you to buy a fishing hook, isn't it? It's all about making money. Try not spending money, how much is earned?" Yan began to feel tempted as he walked and thought. Before waiting for Yan Changqing to demonstrate by the river, he waved his hand and said, "Don't pull it anymore. I've been listening to it for half a month and it's been a headache. It's not impossible to try it out. Anyway, I'm listening to you pull quite smoothly now." Yan Changqing looked at him pondering and cheered him on, "Think about it, let's go to the county town first. If we earn more, we can switch to arrow, and then go to a place with more wealthy people. In the future, we will definitely have a meal of meat every 3 to 5. Yan pouted and said, "In our small county town, do you still expect to earn money by playing the arrow? Do you still make a lot of money? Dreaming." Yan Changqing actually knows that there is a place to go, but the place is too far, and neither of the two families can come up with a bicycle. It's not realistic to go too far. Let's just continue to promise, no matter how much I earn, I'll split it in half. I'm a child, and it's strange to see a child like me who can pull strings. Some people might even give me money, and what I earn is for nothing. What a good deal. It's a bit far to the county town. Yen was a bit conflicted, willing to earn some money, even a few cents. It's at least 50 miles from us to the county town, and you can't walk much. I have to carry you on my back. Whenever Yen is more reliable, he cannot promise Yen Chongqing this matter. How unreliable a person could be to take a 6-year-old child to the streets to perform. However, Yen is only 20 years old, and now he has begun to consider the difficulties in practical operation. Therefore, Yen Chongqing took advantage of the heat and provided reliable advice. We can borrow a bicycle. With a reminder, Yen immediately had an idea. £7, do you think we can borrow your aunt's bicycle? That will definitely work. Yen Chongqing strongly supports it. Yen Chongqing's aunt is Yen Dehai's younger sister, Yen older sister. A few years ago, she married into the town. Although her grandmother often says that her uncle is also unreliable and makes her feel uneasy, Yen Chongqing knows that her uncle is still quite reliable. My uncle's father is a worker at the county cotton factory, which is a secure job. When my uncle was young, he didn't work very seriously for a period of time. But soon, when the overall environment improved and there were more people doing business, my uncle became a little master of getting rich, going through various ups and downs, and ultimately having a small fortune. The main reason is that people are also righteous, have never been afraid of poverty or wealth, and do not forget to help their relatives after making money in business. Yen Chongqing knew why his second uncle hesitated, but he felt that his uncle was from the town and that his aunt, who had married before, was a member of the family. When he went to borrow something, he always felt like a poor relative came to him. He indirectly reminded, I haven't seen my aunt for a long time, and I want her to try the fish I caught too. Yen immediately felt that this matter was not difficult to handle. After all, it was his nephew who wanted to see his aunt, and he didn't go empty-handed. Next, the two continued to discuss that it was 20 miles from Danshuang to the town, and Yen Chongqing's small body couldn't walk that far. Yen has a solution. There is a brick firing kiln not far from Dian village, and the horse farmers in the village earn money by pulling bricks with carriages. The two of them can first take a carriage to the kiln factory, then take the kiln factory to the town's tractor, borrow a bicycle from the town to the county town, and then sell art on the streets to earn money to buy meat. Plan to pass. The next morning before dawn, Yen Chongqing and Yen had breakfast and boarded a horse-drawn carriage with a strand of hair missing from its tail, heading towards the kiln factory. The owner of the carriage was an elder of Yen Chongqing who shouted, "For uncle." He couldn't bear to ride the carriage. If the horse had to pull the carriage for a day, he should cherish it. Yen felt even more embarrassed to take the car, carrying a few fish that had not been completely exhaled as he walked in front of the car. Yen Chongqing sat in the car with a newly changed horsehair arrow, and next to it were mostly snake skin bags of vegetables, which were brought for his aunt's house. A bundle of wheat straw is Yen Chongqing's seat cushion, which is used to pull the car on the road. When encountering muddy terrain, the car cannot get on and is placed under the wheels. Since it's not for people to sit on, there won't be much comfort, especially since Yen Chongqing only wore a thin and large waistband. A slight scratch is inevitable. At least it's better than walking. Just looking at fourth uncle walking a bit awkward, it was obvious that his legs were a bit weak. Yen Chongqing felt very embarrassed and also a bit grateful. Fortunately, it was his own horse, otherwise he might not have been able to continue working today. But we cannot blame the horse pulling the cart. Even if it's the owner, it's normal for you to take a pair of scissors and wrap them around the back of someone's buttocks, pull their tail and hold them up to get them kicked. The carriage swayed until the kiln factory was finally lit up, and the kiln factory was already in full swing. The weather is hot in summer, and people have to work early. Yen took a bag of 22 cents worth of Bai Song cigarettes and spoke to the tractor driver. After asking a few people, he found a car to go to town. This time Yen Chongqing doesn't need to sit on wheat straw, he sits on Uncle Air's leg. Yen sat on the wheel guard next to the tractor driver, holding Yen Chongqing, several fish that had completely disappeared, and a bag of vegetables hanging on the front railing of the truck. Let's go to town. Yen Chongqing almost forgot the appearance of this small town in the past. A street over 100 meters long was mostly low-tiled houses, with many scattered sheds along the street. Only one section of the street had a 3-story building next to it, which was the former supply and marketing cooperative across from the main residence. The street is also a dirt road, and the raised pebbles prove that it is a repaired road. The houses with blue bricks and green tiles were disheveled, and the sheds were mostly made of wood, some of which had already turned black. Most of the people on the street are wearing gray clothes, and most of the white polyester shirts are not as white. I don't know if it's because the sun hasn't risen yet, but Yen Chongqing felt that the town was covered in gray and looked old and dilapidated. As she was about to pass by the entrance of the town primary school, Yen Chongqing specifically looked at a low and small house across from her. That was a family selling scales, and an old man with a half-foot-long gray beard was washing his beard seriously at the door. Master Yang Zhili told Yen Chongqing that his surname was Zhao and he could make the eru. Come back when you have the money. In the blink of an eye, I arrived at my aunt's house and luckily caught up with the popular scene of hitting children. Putting down the fish and vegetables, Yen Chongqing appreciated this scene. The cousin of the aunt's family is only 1 year younger than Yen Chongqing, but his mischievous level is more than 1 point higher. He is only 5 years old and has been a famous troublemaker for hundreds of meters. Jianghu people call him Black Skin. In the morning, my aunt and uncle said that when school began, they would let little Black Egg go to the kindergarten, also called the Yuhong class these days. Because my home is on the east side of the town and the kindergarten is on the west end of the street, it's a bit far away. This guy doesn't want to go and is threatening his parents with not eating. After greeting her uncle's family, Yen Chongqing pretended to advise her Auntie, stop fighting. My younger brother is still young, and I was scolded by my father a few days ago for fishing. Actually, I just saw that you were tired of work and wanted to catch some fish for you to eat. By the way, cousin, do you want to eat fish or not? I will not go to school for anything I want to eat, and I will not go to school even if I die. Little Black Century Egg is one of the few fat children in recent years. He is not tall and a little dark. He is not old and has a temper. He is being beaten. Now whoever talks to him will be blamed. It's easy to get angry for a while, but it's also easy to get beaten. Auntie gave a crisp slap and said, speak up. Yen Chongqing felt a sense of revenge in her heart. He remembered what happened in his previous life. It wasn't Yen Chongqing who held grudges, but this guy was really a professional in deceiving people. Yen Chongqing remembers very clearly that during the summer vacation after graduating from elementary school, he came to the town to play. This cousin told him that whoever bullied him. At that time, Yen Chongqing was very loyal and took action. He beat up the person who bullied him, pushed the bear child into the lotus pond next to junior high school, and even snatched a bamboo sword toy from that guy. As a result, their mother came over. This is nothing. When middle school starts, Yen Chongqing is dumbfounded. Whoever's mother is the first-grade homeroom teacher. Although she didn't teach her own class, Yen Chongqing also hid from others for a while. The key is to look back and say that my cousin who was bullied and who he is still a tough guy and has a lot of fun playing. When Yen Chongqing goes to high school, there will be another group fight, which was also a bad idea from this guy. That time, it wasn't Yen Chongqing running fast with a few people, and his high school career was about to end early. So now. Is he still a child? Beat harder. Signed, please rest assured to collect. Newcomer's new book, Seek to Collect, seek to collect. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Those who can mend clothes are all wealthy people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Those who can mend clothes are all wealthy people. Yen arrived at his sister's house, clearly feeling a bit reserved. But Yen Chongqing didn't care. In front of her aunt and the whole family, she spoke up and said, "Uncle, your family is living really well. My aunt has gained weight and turned white here." Eating fat and turning white indicates not enduring hardship, proving a good life. Currently, there is no matter of men, women, and children losing weight together. My uncle chuckled as his parents listened in. Although they didn't speak, they clearly looked much happier. Continuing to look at the flowers and plants in the yard, Yen Chongqing looked envious again and said, "The flowers you planted in your family are really beautiful. These flowers look so beautiful. Oh, what is this? The blooming flowers look like cat faces." "That's the cat face flower, it's all grown by your uncle and aunt. I don't have the ability to plant so many flowers." Auntie couldn't help feeling happy when she saw her nephew being sensible. Yen Chongqing quickly complimented the old man, "Grandpa, you're really amazing. These flowers and plants are so lively that they all look good at first glance. This one looks good, and that one looks good too." The old man is the head of the family and is not very talkative. He has always looked down on people and only improved in old age. It can't be considered good either. Later, when his uncle's mother passed away, the old man had no old companion, and he lost his energy and didn't care about anything. He really loves planting flowers and plants, and he takes care of everything in the yard. He likes to hear people say that the flowers and plants he grows are good. After brainstorming and saying a lot of good things, Yen Chongqing saw that his second uncle was about to come to an end and didn't say a word, so he had to speak up on his own. "Uncle, my second uncle said he wanted to take me to the city to see and borrow your bicycle to ride. Do you think it's okay? My uncle is a good uncle. He waved his hand and said, 'Go ride. This matter has come to an end.'" The bicycle, known as the 2 or 8 Great Bars, walked on a road paved with pebbles, mixed with sand and soil. Yen looked thoughtful and said, £7, you're really enlightened. But it's too early. I don't even remember anything about my childhood. Yen Chongqing felt very uncomfortable and was too lazy to speak. He wanted to sit behind the bicycle, but Yen refused, afraid that he would fall, so he insisted on having him sit diagonally in front. This way, the arm supporting the handlebar becomes a fence, ensuring that it does not fall off. Now there is an aero and an air cylinder on the back seat, as well as a small bag tied together, which contains files, wrenches, screwdrivers, and glue to prevent problems with bicycles on the way. The road was bumpy, sitting on an iron pole. Although I had stacked several layers of snake skin bags to cushion the vegetables, the feeling was not long after. Yen Chongqing felt a bit numb in his legs. He quickly requested to stop the car, then got off and started bouncing around. Those who have experience understand that if you don't move, sitting for a long time will make your legs and feet numb and unable to touch the ground. That feeling is as sour as it feels. Looking at the bouncing Yen Chongqing, Yen suddenly said, "I did something wrong today." Yen Chongqing was taken aback and said, "What went wrong?" "I should be wearing a little worn out," Yen said and began to imagine. "We dress well, and we don't look like poor people who can't come out to make a living. We have to dress poorly, that's why." Yen Chongqing looked at the yellowed cotton shirt on him. The shirt has been washed for an unknown amount of time, and now it looks thin like inferior cotton yarn. You can clearly see a few small holes in the vest you are wearing inside. It's quite suitable to make a short video for the ladies in the future, with a perspective outfit and a trendy style. Take a look at his gray pants again, the color is not even clear, and the left knee and the bottom of the back buttocks are all sewn. By the way, the shirt hasn't been patched up because it's the one he can handle the most, and he usually doesn't wear it in the village. The rubber part in front of a pair of military green cloth shoes on the feet has also been repaired. These are already his good clothes. Looking at herself again, Yan Chongqing was still wearing a vest with a large waistband. At least the vest was not torn, but the waistband was made from adult clothing. The sandals on her feet have been glued and patched in several places, and Yan Chongqing herself was very skilled in this glued technique in her previous life. She only needed a small iron bar to complete the entire process. Looking at the second uncle who spoke eloquently, he finally couldn't help but say, "Do you think we have the money to sew clothes and can be considered wealthy?" That's not it. Yan Er's endless chatter came to an abrupt end, unsure of what to say for a moment. What I mean is, wear it a bit more worn out. Yan Chongqing gestured to him to look at his clothes and said, "If it's any more worn out, we can't wear it anymore. How about we go to the county street to perform a spiral body art show?" This. Yan Er was choked and had nothing to say. He shuddered at the thought of the scene, so he reached out and slapped him. "Get in the car, let's go. I can't talk to you anymore, can't I beat you? I am the second uncle." Stopped 2 or 3 times along the way, and when Yan Chongqing saw that small county town, he felt like cursing in his heart. I don't want to curse others, I want to curse myself. In my previous life, I was so foolish that I realized that as long as I returned to the present era, I would definitely be able to rise to the top of the world. It takes 3 or 4 hours to get into a county town now, and it feels like people are peeling off their skin. It's too difficult. But without considering anything else, the sun is already high. When it gets hotter, there will be no one on the street immediately. Who else will be performing for? The two of them didn't know much about the county town, but fortunately there weren't many bustling places in the county town. After discussing, they inquired and arrived at the entrance of a clothing market in the county town. On one side is the station, and on the other side is the entrance to the clothing market. Next to the key is a gate with a sign hanging. Tongshu County Public Security Bureau. Looking at it gives people a special sense of security. The entrance of the clothing market is adorned with 2 pillars and an antique flying eaves. Yan Chongqing looked at it and decided to start her career as a performer right next to the pillars. Just, when things come to an end. It's better to think twice. I don't know why I remembered this sentence. To be honest, Yan Chongqing didn't really want to do it. I always feel a bit ashamed. I have been to a factory or a construction site in my previous life, and have done decoration, running errands, and delivering goods, but I have never done this before. Yan Er looked at his nephew and began to have some doubts. As he looked at him, he understood, you don't want to back down, do you? You said so strongly on the way, are you now hesitant? Anyway, everyone has come. Yeah. Everyone is here. Still the snake skin bag containing vegetables, lay it on the ground and sit on it. The arrow was placed on her lap, and Yan Chongqing looked at the crowds coming and going and closed her eyes. It's not about pretending, we need to first find the feeling. Imagine that you are not on the street, but by the seaside before your rebirth, and it suddenly feels different. At this moment, the noise on the streets has turned into the sound of waves and wind, and the aroma from the nearby snack stall has turned into the taste of the sea. Think about your skill progress bar and give yourself some courage and confidence. The first level arrow skill, which exceeds 50% of the skill progress bar, is actually considered proficient, at least to the point of being at will. Those who have studied musical instruments know that even if it is the first time they listen to a song, they do not need to know the score, but can still play it according to their own impression of the song. It's not a very advanced stage or level, but as long as you take it seriously, playing on the street is still not a problem. So, Yan Chongqing lowered her head and looked at the tattered arrow in her hand. Go ahead. A large river with wide waves and fragrant rice flowers blowing in the wind on both sides. The arrow, whose sound quality is not very good, seems to be fulfilling its final mission. With a slightly hoarse and whimpering voice, there is a bit of grandeur and grandeur. In this bustling street, it seems like a gentle breeze quietly blowing past. It's not really stunning, nor does it have much momentum, but it's just so subtle that it's hard to resist listening. Yen stood foolishly on the side. He has come to the county town for a poor tour before, and with the children in the village, he would take whatever car he had and run away without a car, coming to the county town to watch the excitement. I dare not even take out a few cents from the piece in my pocket. I can't afford anything just by looking at it. I have also entered the clothing market before, and I dare not ask about the price. I only dare to listen to others asking, let alone try it on. The only expense is to spend 20 cents on a big xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, and eat at home. Standing here now, watching his nephew pretend to play the eru, even though his ears could hear the melody of the cocoon, his mood was mixed for a moment. Before he could think much, there were suddenly many more people in front of him. There's not much entertainment right now, and it's not easy to find something new. With such a young child playing eru on the street, it's somewhat new. It's normal to attract some people over. Who's the child from? Can you play the eru at such a young age? This string is pulled well. The child is quite capable. Didn't adults watch? Are they performing arts? Signed, please collect. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Performing or begging. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Performing or begging. Listening to the voices of people's discussions, Yen didn't even know what was on his mind. It was a mix of emotions and a bit confusing. Then I remembered and quickly took a tin jar that was slightly larger than a soda can and placed it in front of my nephew. The jar was used to hold earthworms while fishing, and it was versatile. Unexpectedly, this move immediately sparked even greater discussion. What a performing artist! Such a child! Is it your child? He's a bit too young. It doesn't look like it. This young man has a slightly tender face, and at first glance, he doesn't look like someone with such a big child. Don't be the one who abducted the child, right? Why don't you call the police? The police station is across from you. Yen panicked and said, No, this is my nephew, my own nephew. It's really not a child abduction. Being talked about by a group of people, he, who had never experienced it before, suddenly had a confused mind and didn't know what to say. He could only argue that he wasn't the one who abducted the child. I dare not spread the reputation of kidnapping children, otherwise being beaten to death would be unjustified. It's not uncommon to be beaten to death for doing bad things these days. Don't even think it's at the entrance of the Public Security Bureau. Young and old men are rushing up emotionally, and even police officers may not be able to stop it. Yen Changqing originally focused on playing the eru, but now his voice is so loud that he doesn't play the eru. He has to explain to himself, uncle, aunt, grandpa, and grandma, this is my second uncle. We come from Taoshu Township to perform. He didn't kidnap me, otherwise he wouldn't have run to the entrance of the Public Security Bureau, would he? To be honest, it should be that he kidnapped Uncle Air and brought him here. The child's crisp and clear voice, with a credibility of up to 88%. So the voice of discussion rose again. Are you performing at such a young age? Yen Changqing continued, hurry up and start school to earn tuition fees. Auntie, look at my eru. If you don't come out and perform quickly, it will be bad. It's not auntie, I have to call it grandma. The aunt, who was called auntie, burst into laughter. She is now an auntie at her age, and young people get married early. She probably has grandchildren in her family. She grinned and groped in her pocket for a while, taking out a few cents and a penny. After thinking for a while, she took a 5-cent coin and wrapped it in a 1-cent banknote, carefully placing it in the tin jar. Thank you, Grandma, I'll play another tune for you. Yen Changqing changed her voice quickly. Anyway, everyone has come. Ladu pulled. For the sake of eating meat, it's nothing. At least these people are more kind and cheerful than some of the foremen and foremen in his previous life. After a moment of contemplation, Yan Chongqing decided to play a song that no one else had heard of. Anyway, there are many songs in my memory, so let's just play them and earn some money to buy meat. Of course, Yan Chongqing had no intention of plagiarizing someone else's song. He just played it on the street, and when the song was over, who would remember? Still imagine being by the seaside, with the sound of sea breeze and waves in his ears. If he wants to be watched by many people, he can't continue playing. Then focus wholeheartedly on the eru. Get up. Yan stood foolishly on the side. He watched as the enthusiastic aunt introduced her to people, saying that this was a child from the countryside who sold handicrafts to earn tuition fees. He watched many people listen attentively, and watching someone take out 1, 2, 5, and even 50 cents, it's even more silly. Can you really make money? In fact, the current prices may seem unscientific in the future. It's normal for vegetables in rural areas to cost over £10 per cent, but the prices of industrial products are outrageously high. Otherwise, Yan wouldn't have cherished a tin jar. Anything that is collected on the streets is broken, and even a glass wine bottle is worth a few cents. The better ones cost a few cents. Worn shoe soles, rotten plastic film, broken glass, etc., as long as they are produced by the factory, they can be sold for money. The cheapest ones are those that can be grown in the fields, in addition to grain. But after the grain is grown, it needs to pay public grain, as well as agricultural taxes and other things. In the end, only a small portion of the grain can be left at home, and even cannot be retained. It is difficult for rural people to make money, they have no means or knowledge, and their strength is useless. Just like Yan you told him to go to the provincial capital hundreds of miles away, buy some electronic products, or wholesale some beautiful clothes, and come back to make big money, but he didn't believe it at all. If you ask him to spend all his money on business, he will risk his life with you. Because at the entrance of the county clothing market where he is now, it is the farthest place he has ever been, and everything on the street now is his greatest insight. He watched as the car inside the County Public Security Bureau drove out, which was a Jeep 212 shot down by the army. It consumed 12 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers and was a young man. He had been driving for a long time and the road was not good, so maybe he wouldn't be able to start the engine and would have to be pushed. Just this old car, Yan couldn't help but follow and smell the smell of exhaust gas. With this insight, can he think of what a big city in the distance looks like and what ways to do business? Just like Yan Chongqing, who wore a cotton jacket and carried a quilt to work in the South back then. At that time, he never expected that as soon as he got off the car, he could see someone wearing short sleeves. The little girl even walked out wearing panties, and he felt embarrassed to shift his gaze, but at this moment, Yan Chongqing suddenly felt a little unhappy. He stopped playing the eru and looked at the crowd around him. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he changed to a more cheerful tune and started playing it. A song that is particularly suitable for the Chinese New Year. Congratulations, 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 congratulations. He just wanted to say, we're here to do art, we can have enough food at home, and we can also go fishing in the river to eat. It's not as pitiful as you think. If you think the eru sounds good and you give us money, we will definitely thank you, but if you treat us as beggars, we will not thank you for giving us money. The reason why he didn't say it was because he remembered the words of a classmate in his previous life. The classmate from the town who makes clothes at home said, sometimes what we think is important, when we look back, is actually just what we think. Just like how we feel that something hurts our self-esteem, if we change our minds, it may not be true, and others may not think the same way. Because we all come from poor families and have nothing but poverty, that bit of self-esteem is our last thing, so it's particularly important to consider it. Sometimes, even when we can't even talk about self-esteem, we have to do it. Yan Chongqing thinks it is quite suitable for the current scene. The people in front of us are all with good intentions, and there is really no need to worry about whether they are kind-hearted, enthusiastic, or sympathetic. If there is anything else you can do, then just sing a happy blessing to make everyone feel more at ease. Although the sound quality of the eru is not good, Yan Changqing feels that everyone can understand her meaning. Didn't you hear the people around you clearly get excited? Someone is still telling Yan you can pack the money later, don't let the thieves touch it too much. When school starts, hurry up and let the children go to school. To be honest, it's quite heartwarming. Originally, Yan Changqing had prepared some backup pieces, such as Wan Yi, who couldn't even earn a hard work fee, so she played a few sad and sorrowful songs, such as Singing in the Illness, to gain some sympathy. It seems completely unnecessary now. Young man, put these money away and don't leave them outside. Someone next to him reminded Yan Yan woke up from a dream and quickly emptied the money from the small tin jar, stuffing it into his pocket haphazardly. Yan Changqing didn't pay attention to these things, he felt a bit overwhelmed. It is wise to give up those sad and tragic songs. Playing these cheerful songs not only makes the listener feel good, but also makes the performer feel particularly happy. As soon as the melody changed, an old lady shouted, "Hey, I know this. It's listening to my mom talk about the past." Yan Changqing's song library is still very rich. When he first started working, he entered a factory and didn't have any entertainment such as a mobile phone. He was tired all day and fell asleep at night. After gradually adapting, I bought a recorder and put it in the dormitory. So listening to music became everyone's bedtime entertainment. Pirated cassette tapes on the streets were not expensive either. Although it was necessary to turn on the tape recorder from time to time, take it out and rewind it, in the eyes of people at that time, it was not a big deal. Buying magnetic tapes is only for the sake of affordability, and there is no need to study any trends or even traditional Chinese opera. There is basically no choice what song to listen to, but after listening to a cassette tape, you can flip it over and listen to the other side. There are only so many cassette tapes, and when you hear a note repeatedly, you immediately know what song it is. So after a while, someone said, "Hey, I know this too. It's the waves of Honghu Lake, right?" "Right, right." Someone immediately agreed. In an era of lack of entertainment, being able to listen to familiar songs on the street and switch to playing instruments makes people feel happy. As the sun rose and the onlookers gradually dispersed, Yan Changqing immediately unleashed her long-prepared strategy. "I vaguely dream of something I have seen before, but the waves in my heart appear. Those who have not experienced it before will never realize how popular the legend of the Condor Heroes is now." As a result, the first line of the theme song, "Iron Blood and Dan Heart," rang out from the eru, and those who had originally wanted to leave couldn't take a step. Those who had just passed by but didn't want to come, couldn't help but approach. Yan began to faint again. He had already poured out the money from the tin jar twice. He thought it would be over soon, but when his nephew changed the tune, people gathered around again. When the iron-blooded alchemy was over, there were actually people shouting to do it again. Based on the reactions of the previous songs, Yan Changqing suddenly felt that she had found a trick. She shouldn't play unfamiliar songs. Although they will be popular in the future, everyone's reactions are still not as good as those familiar now. A middle-aged man shouted, "Child, can you see the reflection of the moon in the second spring?" Yan Changqing shook her head and said, "That's too difficult, not yet. It's actually fake." Now everyone is listening to a pack of joy, and they have also earned several barrels of gold themselves. That small tin can is fine even if it's a small bucket, but no one came to defend it. As a qualified street performer, Yan Changqing would never do anything that would dampen the interest of the audience. It's better to have a heart of iron and blood, as there are still people requesting it. Then, do it again. After repeating it again, someone shouted again. Not only did someone shout this time, but they also stuffed the money into the tin can and shouted. So again. Over and over again, this single song was played 7 or 8 times, and it wasn't until after midnight that people gradually began to disperse. The harvest is really not small. End of this chapter. Chapter 8 Rebirth. Buying books for the first time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Rebirth. Buying books for the first time after 12.30, the sun became even hotter, and there were not many people in the clothing market. However, there were scattered diners at several snack stalls at the entrance. Yan Chongqing and his second uncle have packed up their things and are ready to go to the entrance with a sign on the opposite side to count the harvest. It's the gate with the sign of Tongshu County Public Security Bureau hanging. I don't know how much money there is, but the two pockets of Yan Er's pants are bulging, which looks too conspicuous and easily attracts malicious looks. Therefore, Yan Chongqing suggested going to the opposite side to count them. Nothing else, just for safety. Now, the gate is relatively approachable. Although Yan Er is a little nervous, Yan Chongqing is not. He goes to the door and shouts to the gatekeeper, "Sir, can we count some money behind the door?" The old man happily pointed to the side and said, "Push the car into the courtyard and park it. Go to the house next to me slowly. That house is the reception area, and there is no one around now. The little one's strings are pulling well." Yan Chongqing smiled and thanked him. "Thank you very much for your praise, Grandpa. I really pushed my bicycle into the courtyard and entered the reception area to start counting the harvest. First count the banknotes, then sort and place the coins, carefully counting each category." Yan Er was very depressed, but he discovered a new problem. He was not as good at arithmetic as his nephew, and at least he was also a person who had attended second grade of elementary school, not comparable to someone who had not attended school. He has been swayed by a pile of money on the table and has no time to think about where his nephew learned arithmetic. There's really a lot of money. There are more than 20 bills for 1 yuan, which is just over 20 yuan. Then there are 50 cents, 20 cents. After calculating, the paper currency is over 60 yuan, plus coins, it's a total of 70.850.7 cents. Yan Er couldn't help but suggest, "Why don't we move to another place and hang out for a while?" Yan Chongqing looked down on him and said, "We've all gone to eat now, where's anyone? We'll have to wait for the party before. Goodbye, it's our first time going out today. If we go back late, we won't be able to come out in the future, which will be a big loss." In just one sentence, Yan Er suppressed his greed in his heart. However, Yan Chongqing comforted him, "You go back and rest today. Next time, let's run a little further and go to the oil field. The people there are very wealthy, which is the wealthiest place now." "How do you know?" "I haven't been there either. I just know. Don't worry, listen to me. Look at it now, don't we just make money?" Facts are persuasive, and Yan Er's full of doubts are not important. He took out a palm-wide long pocket sewn with white cloth and said while holding the money, "Listen to me, this money really has half of it. Can I still deceive you?" Yan Chongqing said and quickly changed his mind. "Are you considering investing in me or not? Let's go back later and ask how much it costs to get an arrow. If my arrow is broken, I won't be able to." Yan Er answered quickly, "No problem. By the way, I'll keep these small changes in my pocket. I'll take you to buy something to eat later." "Okay. Leave a few more yuan and buy my cousin a toy or something later, otherwise it won't be good to borrow a bicycle next time. Then buy it." The two people thanked the gatekeeper and went out of the gate. They bought 2 large xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, on the street, one for 20 cents, and the larger one. They looked bigger than Yan Chongqing's face, and the sesame seeds were sprinkled on it, which made it delicious. Eating a bit dry, Yan Chongqing used her eloquence and leaned on the cute side of the tea stall to buy 5 cups of water for 10 cents. The tea stall is set up in street shops, with a small square table and several glass cups on top, with a square glass block covering the cups. The tea, which was originally 3 cents per cup, couldn't be enjoyed by the two of them either. They only knew that the warm tea had already been added to quench their thirst. Yan Changqing drank tea and nibbled on the cake, staring intently at the braised meat on the nearby stall. She smelled the taste of braised meat and pretended to be eating a big meal. It was so delicious. Yen looked at the tea stall with envy and said, "If only we lived in the city too. Setting up a tea stall at the entrance would make money." Yan Changqing prophesied, "This business won't last long. It won't be long until bicycles, tractors, and tricycles become popular, and people who go to the city to go to the market can bring more things. The efficiency of going back and forth will also be higher, and this small tea stall will lose much business." After drinking tea and eating xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, they went to the next store and prepared to spend their money to buy a small green iron toad. The kind that can wind up, and then the toad would jump up, which is now a very tall toy. As a result, the price was not agreed upon. Yan Changqing offered a price and shouted to Yen to show off his intention to leave, indicating that the boss would not buy if he did not agree. An awkward thing happened, the boss really didn't shout at them. Yan Changqing harbored a great hatred not towards his boss, but towards himself. Having been reborn for almost a month, why didn't he know how to develop his speaking skills, increase his persuasiveness, and facilitate bargaining? It seems that even if we are reborn, we cannot solve the fact that we do not know how to bargain. We used to not feel like being with the villagers, but now that we leave the village, our shortcomings are immediately exposed. Fortunately, the sun was very scorching, and Yen didn't notice that his nephew's face was getting a little hot. He was still muttering, "How much do you want to buy something else for a few dollars?" Yan Changqing took the opportunity and said, "Why don't you buy a backpack or something? My cousin didn't say he was going to attend a red education class, so giving him a backpack would be perfect." "Then buy a backpack," Yen supported. As a result, the backpack also costs a few yuan, but the stationery box is cheap and made of a type of iron sheet, which is less than 1 yuan. So I bought a stationery box with an animated Sun Wukong driving clouds on the surface. I saw a rectangular rubber with small animal paintings printed on it, which was not expensive. So I bought 2 pieces, as well as a pencil and a notebook. I also bought paper and pens for myself, so I can use them to remember something when I go back. Then the 2 of them had no attachment to the county town anymore, and began to go home under the midday sun. Carrying money with them, feeling uneasy and wanting to hurry home. When Yan Changqing was awakened by his second uncle's call, he had already reached the streets of Taoshu town. Being picked up from his bicycle, he immediately felt the soreness of numbness in his legs and feet, unable to touch the ground. He leaned against the electric pole on the roadside and wanted to complain a few words. However, he saw Yen whose face and neck were red, swing his arm and swallow the words on his lips. Their faces and necks were sunburned, and they set off early in the morning without wearing straw hats. Swinging his arm was naturally because he had to hold on to the sleeping Yan Changqing all the way and use it as a pillow for him. A 20-year-old young person may have just experienced the hardships of being an elder, silently moving his arms and pretending nothing happened. "We'll return the car later and go buy an arrow. I don't know how much it costs." Yan Changqing still felt a little melancholy. "Actually, I also wanted us to buy a bicycle as soon as possible. It's really inconvenient without a means of transportation." "That's also easy." Yen transportation suddenly became happy. "A few more trips to the county town will be about it." This person is quite optimistic. Yan Changqing didn't refute, feeling that his legs and feet had improved a bit. "Hurry up and return the car," he said as soon as she didn't go far. Yan Changqing called for a stop and said, "Let's go to the purchasing shop and ask how many books to buy. Do you recognize characters?" Yen was surprised. "Or are you planning to learn to recognize characters?" "I bought it and put it back in the toilet to wipe my butt," Yan Changqing said confidently. "I no longer want to use bricks, tiles, soil lumps, and leaves to impersonate toilet paper. As soon as I hear it, I know how embarrassing it is, so much so that even though it is important, other rebirths feel embarrassed to say it. Toilet paper is definitely more expensive than waste paper. Yan Changqing is afraid that if she buys it back, she will be beaten for waste. In rural areas, only families buy toilet paper when they have children who are taking a postpartum confinement. Most women don't even use toilet paper for their monthly bleeding events, and can only use one type of toilet tape, cloth, and the kind that can be used for washing. Yen didn't object. The one who earns money is the final say. He only said, "Look if there is a calligraphy book with pictures. You can buy it and learn it. I'll tell you, you must study hard. Don't be like me. If you can't read, go out like a fool." Yan Changqing really wants to say that Uncle Air, you don't need to say much, I understand this truth too. Speaking of which, you are only 20 years old now and you have enough time to learn. Why do you only know to talk about me? Besides, didn't my grandfather say that to you when you were a child? Why are you only in first grade? Maybe at the second grade level. So it can be said that humans have not yet occupied the entire universe because their essence is a kind of disobedient higher animal. The previous generation uses their own experiences to teach the next generation a lesson, but most of the next generation will go through the lesson again and only realize that what the previous generation said was correct after experiencing it themselves. So, they quickly tell the next generation, and what is the result? Thousands of years have passed, and this matter has such an infinite cycle. Every generation will say that reading is important, but those who should not read well will still not read well. This is Yan Changqing standing at the entrance of the acquisition shop, his important insights on humanities and history. Immediately, he stepped in and prepared to buy a book. His first time buying a book in his rebirth was actually using it as toilet paper, thinking about what a bedridden thing it was. The name of the acquisition shop is called the acquisition shop, which should also be considered a product of the times. Everything is collected here, including various waste products, as well as grains and beans. Yan Changqing stood next to a pile of soybeans and discussed the price with the old lady on the recliner behind her. However, the aunt was very straightforward and said, "Where are there any books? They are all useless newspapers and cardboard boxes. Someone has come to buy the better newspaper boxes long ago. You go grab them and look for suitable ones yourself." It turned out to be true, the two of them went into the backyard to search for it for half a day, but couldn't find the complete newspaper. "I just found 2.5 books, because there were no books before or after being torn apart." Yan Changqing could only barely read them, and one of them was speculated to be 7 Heroes and 5 Virtues, based on its content. The other book should be about depicting the difficult life in the old society. Yan Changqing compared the life in the book and felt that it was indeed happier now than before. However, he was not interested in continuing to read it. The endless book is the most annoying, go back and use it as toilet paper. I selected a few more student homework books that I had written before, but the boss didn't weigh them and asked for 20 cents. The price of waste paper is still quite high at present, as long as 20 cents is needed, it will be less. The two of them came out and planned to buy some meat, but unfortunately, the meat stall in the town had already closed, and now there are only a few flies on the stall. As for the braised meat in the restaurant, I just made so much money, let's take it down. When she arrived at her aunt's house, she saw her younger brother and nephew who had been sunburned and their faces turned red. She started talking non-stop, "You're a fool. The sun is so poisonous that you won't leave late. Look at what you two have done with the sun. Go wash them up quickly. Have you eaten yet? Can you eat enough? I'll make you a fried egg." After the two of them washed it, Yen smiled and took out the stationery box he had bought for the child. As soon as his aunt stopped nagging, she started a new round. "Who told you to buy something? How much does it cost? Where did you buy it? Can you refund it? After talking for a while, she felt tired on her own and sighed as she looked at her humbly listening younger brother. This younger brother is also a talented person. He always listens attentively to everything his family says and doesn't argue with you. But after listening, she finished listening and what she should do in the future, also a master who is infuriating and not willing to pay for his life. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Life of Second Uncle. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 9. Second Uncle's life on the hot streets. The space adjacent to the ground seems to be twisted by the sun. No one could be seen everywhere, and the cicadas chirping around became the only sound on the street. Yan Chongqing and his second uncle arrived at the wooden plaque with the word "scale" written on it, and began to pray in their hearts that the price of eru should not be too expensive. When the old man surnamed Zhao was called out to explain his purpose, the old man hesitated and said, "I haven't done this thing for a while." But they still let the two of them into the room, so Yan Chongqing's eyes lit up and pointed to a square table next to the wall, saying, "Isn't that several eru sticks? They're not for sale, are they?" Zhao, the old man, felt his gray beard and was very conflicted. "These are all for my own use and I have no intention of selling them. I think the wood you're using is pretty good. How about I fix it for you? This one belongs to someone else, but it does need to be repaired. Once it's fixed, I'll give it back to them." Yan Chongqing explained the reason clearly. "I have been learning the eru from others and have been using their things that are not suitable. I always have to buy myself one." Old Zhao's eyes lit up and he said, "Is that what you want to use? Just started learning. Come and listen to a song. Do you have to prove yourself by buying an eru?" Yan Chongqing rose in her heart and began to tune the piano slowly to play a tune. Helpless yet, finding a place in the town that can make eru is already considered luck, and other towns may not have it yet. Comforting herself, Yan Chongqing began to pull up a familiar river again. Old Zhao began to hear the first note and his eyebrows furrowed. As the note flew out, his eyebrows gradually eased and then became entangled again. After listening, he spoke up and said, okay, this child is quite talented, he's pulling well. Since it's good, why are you frowning?" Zhao, the old man, continued to explain his confusion to the two of them. "This eru is not well maintained and its pronunciation is a bit inaccurate. I originally thought that you were a beginner, and I still had a few bamboo eru for practice in the room, which was enough for people to practice. However, using that eru at your level would be a bit wasteful of craftsmanship." It seemed like he had been struggling for a long time before finally making a decision. "Alright, you can choose one on the table. But I'll make it clear for now that I'm using good wood for these few. Although I've used them, I won't sell them for 30 less yuan. 30 is 30. Mr. Zhao is a good person." Yan Chongqing picked up the one that looked relatively new, adjusted it a few times, and then tried the sound test. Suddenly, she felt that what she had used before was garbage. Even Yan who doesn't understand anything, can be heard, and it's obvious that their eru sounds more smooth. "Mr. Zhao." His eyebrows curved and he said, "That one is indeed the latest one made. If you want it, I'll give it to you." Yan Chongqing was still unsatisfied and said, "Can you show me the ones made from bamboo tubes? I usually practice a lot, so I have to take good care of these good ones. Anyway, just being able to improve his skill proficiency is enough. He just wants to make money now and doesn't care about anything else." The bamboo tube-made eru cost 5 yuan, and 2 eru pieces cost 30.5 yuan. Especially when Mr. Zhao muttered about what mahogany the newly made eru was made of, Yan Chongqing was even more satisfied. Before leaving, Mr. Zhao still kept the one he used. He said that this eru is also made of good wood, and as long as it is repaired and maintained, it will be a good qin. The key is to provide free assistance, no charge. Walking onto the street again, Yan began to feel melancholy. He looked down at his small nephew and said, "Let's walk slowly first. When you're tired, I'll carry you on my back. It is obvious that the excitement of earning money has passed, and Yen will once again face the cruel life. The road home is 20 miles, and it is unlikely to encounter a ride on the way. He is ready to use it as a car for his nephew. The two of them finally couldn't bear the sun after taking a few steps, so they spent money to buy 2 new straw hats, which were a necessity in the countryside and not considered reckless spending. Yen Chongqing encouraged his second uncle, "We earned half of the money, and now I've spent it all. The rest is yours. Do you want to buy something? How about buying a pack of milk powder for Changpa?" After much contemplation, Yen finally gritted his teeth and said, "Buy." Another few dollars left them forever in exchange for a pack of milk powder. Actually, most people nowadays use lotus root powder instead of milk powder because milk powder is too expensive. Walking onto the street again, Yen remained silent for a moment and said, "I'll give you the remaining money. It's no use asking for money, you keep it. I'll go to school next year. It's not urgent to go to school, it's yours." Yen Chongqing refused. "Then this is also what you earned. Let your master know that you cannot break my leg. I've spoken in half, my dear brother. Even if my uncle hits you, you'll still score points." Yen Chongqing was very determined. He was young now and would have to rely on his second uncle to run around in the future, so he had to score points. After all, he was asked to accept the money. In fact, this second uncle is very interesting. He belongs to the typical mediocre personality. As long as he has something to eat tomorrow, he won't take the initiative to do anything today. You say he's good, he often does things that his elders seem unreliable. For example, later on he worked with the construction team, and if he had money to earn, he was very satisfied. Then he secretly bought a used and worn-out motorcycle with the newly earned money. The worn-out motorcycle was repaired every 3 days and overhauled every 5 days, and he received a lot of training for it. You said he can't do it, he's repairing his motorcycle. He went to the county town to rent 2 small dilapidated houses and opened his own motorcycle repair shop. Pusey belongs to the kind of people who can't eat enough or starve to death, but he is very satisfied. So I did another unreliable thing. He rented 2 dilapidated bungalows from a motorcycle repair shop, which was a dormitory for a state-owned enterprise employee. It happened to be facing the road, and the back door could be opened as a street-facing shop. Then the landlord changed jobs and left the county town, fooling him into selling the 2 dilapidated dormitories to him. It seems to be 3,000 or 4,000 yuan. At that time, he didn't have that much money and borrowed a circle of relatives and friends to make up for it. Everyone thinks he was fooled into buying those 2 dilapidated houses because they are located in an old and dilapidated area. Then he caught up with his son Yen Changpa going to college. He had just paid off the money he borrowed for buying a house and had nothing to do, so he had to go to the south to follow Yen Chongqing's uncle. He worked as a driver first, then borrowed money and took out a loan. He bought a second-hand 8-wheeled truck for transporting sand and stones. After paying off the loan and having some money to exchange the second-hand ones for new ones, he was satisfied again. So after earning some money, he was asked to buy another rear 8-wheeled car or go back to the county town to buy a new house. He thought what everyone said was right and well spoken, and then bought himself a private car to drive around. Then, everyone earned some money and went back to the county town to buy a house, ready to mock him for having money but not knowing how to buy a house. When he went to buy a car and played, he found out that this guy had a house in the new urban area. That's right, he caught up with the demolition. The original dilapidated bungalow has been transformed into a 2-story storefront house. This is the best place for demolition treatment in the entire county. The land of the old state-owned enterprise has no such thing as forced demolition. The old house has been replaced with a new one, and the area is still larger than before. At that time, the housing prices of ordinary houses in the county had already reached 1 square meter, 7,000 or 8,000 yuan. The house that Uncle Yen Chongqing bought earlier was an abandoned building. Looking at his storefront house, one could only sigh and lament the unfairness of heaven. The key is that he has been wandering around all his life. His son, who doesn't know how to read big characters and doesn't care much, actually got into graduate school, obtained a teaching qualification certificate, and went back to the county high school to become a teacher. Among all the relatives and children, he has the highest education and a relatively good job. The black-skinned cousin of Aunt Yen Chongqing's family, became a soldier after graduating from high school and came back to do business with his father. He spent a lot of money to entrust others to work for a long time before he joined the management team. Just when Yen Chongqing thought about his cousin Black Skin Egg, he saw a familiar figure under the shade of the trees at the front of the bridge. Yen also saw it and wondered, "Why did your uncle run in front of us?" Yen Chongqing was also puzzled and ran up to ask, "Uncle, what are you doing here?" Uncle Chen Yuliang first smiled at Yen Chongqing and then waved his hand to greet his brother. Law, come over here. I have something to say to you. Why did you take 7 pounds to the county? Yen pretended to be confused and said, "I didn't do anything. I just went and took a look, let the child see what the county is like, and gain a long understanding." Chen Yuliang waved his hand and said, "Don't talk nonsense to me. If there's nothing wrong, you won't buy Pengfei a stationery box, and you don't have that spare money. Just tell me and let me understand. I can't handle anything else." Yen wanted to continue pretending to be foolish, but at least Chen Yuliang had more experiences than him. Upon a glance, he noticed the problem. When you came, you brought a string, and now it has turned into 3. There are other things inside, as well as a new straw hat. You bought a lot of things. To be honest, what did you do? Why don't I beat you up? Speaking later, the tone has become stern. Chen Yuliang, who had been to the detention center for fighting, can still intimidate his brother. Law when it comes to beating people. It's not that he's scaring people, it's his wife's advice. We must ask clearly, afraid that Yen won't learn well and will also harm Yen Chongqing. Yen had to look down at his nephew. Yen Chongqing couldn't help but speak up on her own, "Uncle, we're going to the county town to do art. At the entrance of the clothing city, across from the Public Security Bureau, we set up a stall to play eru and earn some money." That's not to say. Chen Yuliang wanted to ask for food, and locally he said begging is asking for food, but the meaning is similar. Because he had met someone walking the streets begging with their eru, he instinctively wanted to say that. The reason why he stopped talking halfway is because he's still a child. I didn't know what to say for a while. Please collect it. Signed, please collect, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. You all become wealthy, so that I can lie down better. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. You all become wealthy, so that I can lie down better. In the river under the bridge to the east of Taoshu town, several naked figures are soaking in the water. The bottom of the river is filled with fine sand, which is very comfortable. Yen Chongqing's feet slowly rubbed against the sand and muttered to his uncle, "Look at me now. I haven't eaten a single meal of meat in a month, and eating an egg is like celebrating the Chinese New Year. I don't think I can make money to buy meat. What will I do if I don't grow tall in the future?" The 3 of them said a few words on the roadside, feeling that it was too hot, so they decided to go under the bridge and talk. "Since you're under the bridge and see the cool river water, then go down the river." Chen Yuliang was still in shock. He never expected that when his brother. Law, uncle, and nephew went out, it was a 6-year-old doll who made the decision. The key is that this doll can also pull strings to earn money. He was speechless for a while and could only say, "It's not a big deal if I know about this matter." "What do your aunt want me to say?" "If she knows about your parents, she will know too, and your grandfather's milk. Your grandfather's old thinking must say that you are a beggar and cannot beat you too. Then don't say it." Yan Chongqing said. Just give me a reason, my aunt listens to you so much. You just fooled me and I'll pass. Chen Yuliang was already angry and laughing. Is there someone like you who incites his uncle to play tricks on his own aunt as a nephew? Is it okay for your aunt to be your own family member? But he still needs to find a way. He has been to the detention center himself and is very open-minded about how these two people earn money, as long as they don't break the law. The poor in the village have no food to eat, especially in Dian village. They are also poor and can think of ways to earn money, which is called having the ability. After thinking for a while, Chen Yuliang finally came up with a solution. So, let's have a unified statement. When you go back, you two will say that you ran into a big cart carrying grain on your way and dropped a bag of soybeans. You went to the county town to sell them. Yan Chongqing subconsciously asked, why is soybeans? Chen Yuliang said angrily, I just heard a while ago that in a village on the west side of the road, there was a bastard who picked up a bag of soybeans that fell from someone else's cart. That's great, Yan Chongqing and Yan two people who are drilling money holes, haven't even thought of discussing how to go home and fool their families. Performing arts is indeed like begging, at least that's how we see it these days. After soaking in the water for a while, Yan Chongqing had another thought. Uncle, don't you want to do some business? Chen Yuliang has a younger brother who took over his father's job. This is how it is these days, taking over. It is only natural for the father to retire and the son to take over. However, he can only go alone, so Chen Yuliang is currently idle and tinkering around at home. Chen Yuliang was speechless. This child is really capable and even knows how to do business. What kind of business can I do? There are people doing all the business that can be done in town. Yan Chongqing opened his mouth and said, you can make liangpi. I see someone selling it in the county, and it doesn't cost anything. You are from the town, and you are not afraid of being bullied when doing business. I also heard from the classmate who made clothes in the town that it's not easy to do business now. Firstly, the overall environment is not good and there is no money. Second, there are too many people on the street. It is said that the best soup with pepper made in the town had to be moved to other places because there were too many free meals later. But it's definitely not a problem for Chen Yuliang to do business, as long as he doesn't bully others, he's not afraid of someone eating for free. Liangpi. Chen Yuliang thought for a long time. We do make jelly in the street, and I can't make liangpi. Yan Chongqing only understands theory and cannot explain the source clearly. He can only suggest, then you go to the county to learn. You don't compete with people in the county for business, so give some money to someone to teach you. If you look at me, I'll find someone to teach me how to play strings, and then I'll make money. Then I have to think about it again. Chen Yuliang didn't say a word of rejection, and now he can't make money. This child can make money and is a smart child. What he said may be worth considering. What's there to think about? Yan Chongqing continued to incite. Try it without much capital, earning more or less is earning. To be honest, if it weren't for the conditions not allowing it, Yan Chongqing would have wanted to incite her parents to do some small business. But it's okay to advise my uncle to do it, anyway, he can't forget himself even if he gets rich, can't he? Now Yan Chongqing's beautiful wish is that all her relatives and friends can become wealthy, so that she can lie down better. Yan felt inexplicably familiar as he listened to the sentence, try not to make too much capital, earning more or less is earning. Sure enough, Chen Yuliang also became tempted and said, then I'll go back and inquire. Alright, that's it for today. You two still have to go home. Don't make any random turns on the way, go home early. As he walked towards the shore, he said, I'll also go to the county later and ask Yuming to inquire about whose house is doing well. Yuming is my younger brother. 7 pounds, hurry up and get dressed and go back with your second uncle. When my business starts, I'll treat you to braised meat. Okay. Yan Chongqing agreed and added more conditions. In a while, the two of us will have to borrow our bicycles again. When we earn enough money to buy a bicycle, we won't borrow it anymore. Chen Yuliang smiled and agreed, you can come and borrow it at any time. Anyway, I won't ride in the county. Now there is only one shop selling jelly in Taoshu town, not Liangpi. Moreover, the cost of Liangpi is lower than that of Liangfen, and the business can certainly be done without saying how much money can be made. This point can be confirmed by Yan Chongqing, because the cold noodles in the town are mung bean noodles, which naturally have a high cost. Chen Yuliang took a few steps and then turned back. He took out the crumpled 2 yuan from his pocket and said, your aunt asked me to give you the money for stationery. Take it, otherwise she will be nagging when I go back. Yan Chongqing definitely couldn't take it. Just as he evaded a few words, Chen Yuliang became impatient and threw the money away before running away. A young man in his 20s, running as if being chased by a dog, calls out quickly. The two of them, wearing straw hats, walked along the roadside looking for trees with shade. They didn't go too far and didn't even have the interest to talk. After walking for a while, Yan finally spoke up and said, are 7 pounds tired? If I'm tired, I'll carry you for a while. I can still walk. Yan Chongqing felt that she was okay. After walking became a skill, the corresponding physical strength improved significantly, and walking would consciously or unconsciously use more labor-saving methods. In addition, after sleeping all the way back from the county town and soaking in the river for half a day just now, it was not very tiring. Yan muttered, it's better to live in the town. Wherever they go, as long as they have money, they can take a car. It's not convenient to leave like us. Yan Chongqing didn't pay much attention at first. As he walked, he suddenly exclaimed, we have money too. Uncle, how much money do you want to keep? Don't spend it. Next time, let's take a bus to the county town. At that time, when my uncle said he wouldn't ride a bicycle to the county town, Yan Chongqing felt something was wrong, but now he understands. At first, he considered riding a bicycle with his second uncle because both of them were poor people. It took money to ride a car to the county town, and he was not sure if he could earn back the ticket money, so he naturally did not choose to ride. But now that the two of them have money, why do they still need to borrow bicycles? 30 miles of dirt, sand, and gravel road, after more than an hour of cycling, the whole body's bones were rearranged and combined several times as the road was bumpy. There is also a way to go to other places, which can be easily taken by car from the county town. There is no need to consider the inconvenience of riding a bicycle. As soon as the train of thought started, Yan Chongqing became full of energy and said, next time, let's leave early and catch the first bus in the morning, then transfer to the oil field. We can even go to the city, as long as we can get there by bus, it's not a problem. Remember to keep a few yuan and don't spend it all. I don't have any money to spend. Yan began to grin when he heard that he didn't need to ride a bike to the county town. Dian village doesn't even have a small shop, and I have to go to the small shop in the neighboring village to buy things. There aren't many valuable items inside, only basic sugar, tobacco, alcohol, needles, and thread. In the end, Yan Chongqing still let her second uncle carry her back home and then used the reasons her uncle said to deceive her family. With 2 new eru, Yan Chongqing can finally confidently improve her proficiency, and her days have returned to calmness. As for the speaking skill, Yan Chongqing has not yet developed it, and he doesn't really like it. If one becomes proficient in speaking and can persuade others with anything they say in the future, wouldn't it be without the joy of raising objections? He is also afraid that his skills will be upgraded with certain attributes, which may affect others. He enjoys spending time with his family after being reborn and does not want to convince others of everything. Besides, he had a clear understanding at the entrance of the acquisition shop. Humans are essentially unconvinced creatures, what's the point of convincing others? In my previous life, I was just a hard-working worker and didn't have any grand plans. Why do I want others to listen to me? Suggestions that can be given without the need for skills. Why bother others if they really don't listen? Do you think being good for others might make them enjoy their peaceful life now? But there is a skill that Yan Chongqing is more dedicated to, and he is preparing to develop a skill to practice Kung Fu. I am young now and lack strength. I need to quickly grow my head and increase my strength, otherwise it will be inconvenient for me to do anything. And if you run outside in the future? I have just been severely beaten recently, and the road is relatively safe. After a while, it won't work, so I need to defend myself. What Yan Chongqing can do now is not only to fish, practice arrow, and throw stones, but also to recall the small videos she watched in her previous life. Thanks to the era where life was rich despite the pressure, he learned a lot through the internet. What kind of Tai Chi Bagua iron wire fist, poking tan leg chain kick, double sword single saber reversal spear, boxing comprehensive fighting, and so on. He has seen all of these, especially those young ladies who make martial arts practice videos. Although their martial arts skills may not really be perfect, they look great. Regardless of whether they are overly beautiful or not, just talk about their posture and movements, and occasionally even give a one-word horse or something like that. Who wouldn't want to take a second look? There is also a large number of martial arts action stars, who doesn't love watching the fight from fist to flesh. Who said that scrolling through short videos is a waste of time? Does the person who said that without scrolling through videos and wasting that little time, they can achieve something that promotes human progress? Besides, if we were to be reborn and happen to have a golden finger that can improve our skill proficiency, wouldn't this little video that has been brushed be useful? End of this chapter.